Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the February report for the Roundtable, my Patreon patrons, supporters. So glad to be able to bring this to you today. Got a lot to talk about, and I hope you enjoy it and it's helpful to you. I am going to make this particular update public. I've done that once before, just as a way to help people understand what you all are getting, so that perhaps other people will desire to share with it. First of all, let's talk about our calendar with regards to events here in Chattanooga and C.S. Lewis. First of all, we're going to be having continue our discussion of God in the Dock on Thursday night, the 21st of February, and we're going to try meeting over at Redeemer Anglican Church in Brainerd. And if you'll look on our website, I will, as usual, I'm going to provide links to everything I talk about with this video. But information on the meeting is available on our society website and on our Facebook page for the C.S. Lewis Society of Chattanooga. It's set up as an event there. But that will be Thursday night, 21st February, 7 o'clock in Brainerd. And then, let's see here, the following month, March, thankfully, the Lord has provided us with a lecture for the annual UTC C.S. Lewis lectureship. We had a little bit of problem. The lecture that we had scheduled for this year's lectureship became ill. And but we've got Dr. Donald Williams of Toccoa College coming. And Dr. Williams is a really, he's well known as a C.S. Lewis scholar, and the lecture is going to be about that passage in Mere Christianity where Lewis makes that famous argument that Jesus was either a liar, a lunatic, or the Lord, as he said he was. And it's going to be really, really good. Again, I'll provide the information on that for you, but the date is Thursday night, the 20th of March, and at UTC Durthick Hall, and we'll look forward to having Dr. Williams with us. And I've got more about Dr. Williams later on in this video. And then also, it is not yet common knowledge because they have not started advertising it here locally yet, but in April, Max Maclean, the actor who's famous for his Screw Tape Letters performance that we've had here a couple times in Chattanooga, he has got a new performance that he does on the conversion of C.S. Lewis. It's about C.S. Lewis coming to Christ out of his atheism, and he's going to be here at the Tivoli Theater in Chattanooga on April the 27th. The tickets aren't even available yet, but I'll provide a link for you to go to the page on the internet where they will be selling tickets for this performance, and you'll be able to get them as soon as they're available. Something else, and I think I've told you about this before, I can't quite remember right now, but I had the idea of the possibility of having a reenactment of the service in Oxford where C.S. Lewis gave his Weight of Glory sermon. So it would be a full-fledged prayer book, Anglican prayer book, evensong service, as much as we're able to duplicate it, and it would be the same Bible readings, the same psalms, the same hymns, and everything that were at that service. And I've been trying to get an actor who impersonates, I guess is the word, C.S. Lewis, who does performances of C.S. Lewis on stage to give the sermon, the Weight of Glory sermon. And I'm struggling with it a bit. One person's not going to work out. Another person almost worked out, but then his plans changed. I wanted to do it on the anniversary, June the 8th, of when the sermon was given. But we might have to not do it right at the anniversary in order to fit the actor's schedule. So we'll see. It might still happen this year at some time. I'm hoping so. I think it's a great idea. I think it would really be inspiring to attend as well. So be praying about that hopefully that'll work out. It would be good if it was this year. If it's not this year, maybe another time. But we'll see. And of course, I will keep you up to date on that as well. Now, I also like to I keep an eye out for any news about the Netflix Narnia programs, the live action TV streaming Narnia, Chronicles of Narnia that Netflix is going to be doing. Still nothing yet. We don't really expect to have any more news right away, but I just want you to know that I am keeping an eye on that, and if anything comes up, I'll be sure to let you know. Now, in the process of getting ready for your report, I remembered that I've recently run across a BBC4 timeline program, which is now available. Somebody has uploaded it to YouTube. That I know that if you watched it, you would really enjoy it. It was done originally in 2013, right around the time that Michael Ward and his friends put together that ceremony at Westminster Abbey, where they installed a plaque dedicated to C.S. Lewis in the Poets' Corner of Westminster Abbey. And the ceremony was 22 November 2013. Sadly, I wasn't able to attend, but at any rate, that was done. And there was a good bit in the news about that. And the famous, maybe infamous, biographer of C.S. Lewis, Dr. A.N. Wilson, the British historian, he did a timeline program. It's an hour-long program on C.S. Lewis. And occasioned by this plaque being installed in Westminster Abbey. And it's really good. It's a very good. Now, Ann Wilson is, I use the word infamous, as he explains, 20 some odd years ago, he wrote a biography about C.S. Lewis. He was not a Christian at the time. He has since become a Christian. And I think this video reflects it. It's very sensitively done. It's very honorable, and it's really, really good. He one of the things that he does in there is he interviews people. He interviews the famous actor Robert Hardy, who was one of Lewis's students. He's got Douglas Gresham in there to talk about his mother Joy. He's got, let's see, who else does he have in there? I wrote some of the names down. Let's see. Oh yes, Lady Jill Freud, who is, as far as I know, and apparently that's what is indicated in the video, the last surviving evacuee, World War II evacuee that lived with Lewis. And she's also a person that I've corresponded with in preparation for my book on the true story behind the Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe. Very nice lady. She's interviewed there. I'm going to have something else to say about her in just a little bit. Let's see who else appears. Oh, Peter Cousin, who is a wonderful gentleman, a friend of mine over in Oxford, likes to give tours of C.S. Lewis. Wilson rides around in his van with him, which is what Peter likes to do, to carry around and show you things. He did that for my wife and I one time, where Lewis lived and that sort of deal. And also when Wilson visits the kilns, the home of C.S. Lewis, Professor Debbie Higgins was the warden at the time, and so you get to see Debbie showing Wilson around in the kilns. And it was Debbie that just not too awful long after this program came out called me up and asked me if I would take her job. And so you'll get to see the kilns much like it was when Sheila and I appeared there, showed up there to take care of the place for a while when Debbie had to come back to the States. So that was kind of fun to see that. But he has these nice interviews with people, and like I say, I can really recommend this to you. Now let's see here. What else do I want to say about it? Oh, now one thing about the show, and it's 50-something minutes long. It's just about a whole hour long. Wilson still advocates the idea that when C.S. Lewis had his debate with the philosophy professor Elizabeth Anscombe at the Socratic Society in Oxford, when she took him to task on a part of his argument from the Book of Miracles, that Lewis was so discouraged because what she had to say was pretty good. And he interviews one of the people there at Oxford who knew Anscombe, and they talk about this Socratic Society meeting in Oxford. But Wilson advocates the idea that Lewis was so disappointed by how he was defeated by Anscombe that he decided to give up writing books on writing about Christian apologetics, and he went to fantasy and the Narnia stories and so forth. Now, since Wilson first has advocated, and there have been other people who've advocated the same. Oh, also, I forgot to tell you, Alistair McGrath has also interviewed a good bit in this video, and he's the more recent of the major biographers of C.S. Lewis, and everything he says is just really good. So, at any rate, with a lot of people, not a lot of people, some people have followed this idea that Lewis was so defeated he gave up on apologetics and did the fantasy. Now, it has since been more widely argued, I believe, and successfully, that what happened was, in fact, there's an article I've read where Dr. Anscombe herself talks about what happened. And she says that she agreed with the basic assumptions of Lewis's argument against the idea of a consistent, materialistic view of the universe, not allowing allowing room for discussion of ethics. She agreed with that. Her problem was with the way that Lewis was arguing that position in a certain place in the book. And what Lewis did was he went back and rewrote that part of the book. So he was disappointed that he had gotten bested at some point in the debate, but he did not give up writing about apologetics. He continued to do that in other ways. And then, like I said, he rewrote that section in Miracles that Anscombe had spoken to him about, and patched it up. So there's actually two different editions of the Book of Miracles. One of them is got the part that Anscombe didn't like, and then the one that you would get today normally is the one that's been fixed up. So at any rate, that's one thing about the program that was a little disappointing, but I'm going to give you the link. You really need to watch it. It's very, very good. A.N. Wilson's on C.S. Lewis. Another thing that I happened on is the BBC had a little. They'll have these little minute and a half snippets about their programming and stuff, and I found one where they themselves interviewed Lady Freud about her experience with Lewis, and it's got excerpts from Lewis reading on the radio with the World War II air raid sirens going on in the background. It's a nice little thing to listen to. It's just a minute and a half. I've shared that with you. Okay, now earlier I said that I was going to come back to Donald Williams, who is our lecturer at the annual C.S. Lewis UTC lecture this year. He's written several good books related to C.S. Lewis. I don't have my copies to show you because I've loaned them to a UTC professor to look at before the lecture. But one of them is called, it's one of his newer ones, and it's called Deep Magic, The Theology Behind the Writings of C.S. Lewis. And in the periodicals Sehnsucht, this is it right here, Sehnsucht, the C.S. Lewis Journal, I did a book review of Donald Williams' book, and I don't think you can. I think you have to buy the journal to get it, and it's well worth. I mean, the journal is a really good journal. But what I thought I would do for you is just read my review today, so that you can benefit from it, and doing it with an anticipation towards hearing Dr. Williams at our meeting in March. So here goes. Oh my goodness. What is happening in Narnia? My background music's getting a little bit overly dramatic. I think I'll turn it down. Hang on just a second. Sorry about that. Okay, now here we go. When I attended the 2016 C.S. Lewis and Friends Colloquium at Taylor University, I remember overhearing a discussion about Will Voss's book Mere Theology, which is a really good book. Voss's work is a compendium of Lewis's beliefs on miscellaneous theological topics. It has been a useful and well-commended source of Lewis's thought since its publication in 2004. However, the interlocutors at the conference complained that Voss's work lacked a critique of Lewis's theology and that something should be written that had Voss's breadth but entered more into an analysis of his thought. Donald Williams was at that conference and, for all I know, may very well have been part of that conversation. I just couldn't remember who it was that was doing the talking. He has at any rate produced just the sort of book that those scholars desired. Williams clearly states the purpose of his work when he writes, quote, "We do not yet have a book that looks at Lewis's presentation of Christian doctrine as a unified whole and critically asks what are its strengths and weaknesses as a guide to biblical faith from a conservative evangelical perspective. And that is the whole, H-O-L-E, this book will try to fill." Okay? Now, I go on to say, as I read Deeper Magic, I was therefore especially concerned how well he accomplished his stated goal. My conclusion is that he does so capably and admirably. The nature of this work, of course, requires a good deal of summarizing in order to set the stage for evaluative remarks at each juncture. As a result, there are times when the book reads like Voss's book. At first, such summary passages frustrated me because I was being critical of Williams' attempt. However, as the book went on, I found Williams to be a master of succinct and accurate statement. I therefore began to increasingly appreciate his own summarizing of Lewis, while gradually recognizing that his analysis and critique was indeed helpful. I also found that Williams not only provides such excellent summaries of Lewis's thought, but in the process of his critique, he composes some excellent essays on evangelical doctrine as well. In the introduction, he addresses the problem of handling the large corpus of Lewis's work in his attempt to study his theological positions. He explains that the task was also daunting because of the multiple genres in which Lewis wrote. And how? And Lewis's persistent attempt to focus on mere Christianity, which meant that he often refused to take positions on matters. A famous one, of course, is on the Holy Communion. He didn't want to really deal with that. He does have a few comments about it in Letters to Malcolm, though. Of course, that's his last book. Thankfully, Lewis could be more forthcoming in his private correspondence, and Williams acknowledges his indebtedness to Walter Hooper's collection of Lewis's letters, the big 3 volumes. Now, Dr. Williams' plan is well organized. He has composed his book in the fashion of a systematic theology. We thus find his material listed under such headings as bibliology, anthropology, Christology, soteriology, and the like. Under each heading, he summarizes what Lewis said about such things, and then he demonstrates how true Lewis was to a Reformed and evangelical perspective, or how he differed from it, and often why he thinks, that is, why Williams thinks that he did differ. Williams does a thorough job and touches on questions that have often been voiced by evangelicals about Lewis's statements, about such things as biblical inerrancy, the extent of the atonement, and his apparent confusion regarding Calvinism and total depravity. Williams' explanations of Lewis's thought are charitable but realistic. In several places, he acknowledges some weakness in Lewis's theology due to the fact that he was, at Lewis's own admission, not a trained theologian. One very valuable part of the book is an excursus on the trilemma issue. Williams brings us up to date on the debate about the trilemma argument, and that's what he's going to be talking about at his lecture in March. In fact, the title of his lecture in March is the title of the chapter in this book where this material occurs. Fairly noting strengths and weaknesses in the objections. He deals at length with such writers as John Bevis Lewis, I have no idea how to pronounce that name. Francis Young, Daniel Howard Snyder, with a mention of N.T. Wright and Alistair McGrath. Williams closes this chapter with his own formal response, which I thought was kind of cute. His final paragraph is a creative way of leaving the subject from his point of view, where he writes, "Liar, lunatic, or lord, lacking, ludicrous, or logical, plunk for liar or lunatic if you must, but let's not come with any patronizing nonsense about how Lewis gave us a fallacious argument. He has not left that open to us. He did not intend to." And of course, if you're familiar with this part of Mere Christianity, you see what he's doing. I conclude. Deeper Magic is important for Lewis scholarship, clarifying issues and factually nailing down Lewis's theological stance within the Christian faith. It is also itself an instructive book for people who want to understand Reformed evangelicalism. The end result of his labor is not only a book illuminating Lewis's theological beliefs, but one might even consider this a good general introduction to Reformed evangelicalism, not only for readers of C.S. Lewis, but for anyone interested in the subject. Okay, so that was my review of Donald Williams' book, Deeper Magic, and he's going to be talking about this material at the lecture, so that's really cool. All right, I think that's all I've got for you this month. Things have been a little bit on the quiet side, but we'll keep our pulse on the C.S. Lewis world. Thanks again for your support as a patron. And again, this video will go public. Share it with your friends, and hopefully they'll be able to benefit from it. And so next month, I hope to see you at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga at the lecture there. And we'll just see what we can keep going with regards to C.S. Lewis here in Chattanooga. Again, thanks, and God bless you.